Wairika Khalsa, Wairiki Fateh. Just to echo everybody's comments, welcome. We're so excited you all are here, and I will say I want to say pleasantly surprised that so many of you are here on a Friday evening. I kind of thought we were going to get the soft talk for the weekend because only half of you would be here, but we will, I think, have a good time this evening. I know that you all have been traveling, and it's been a long day for many of you, so this evening session is somewhat of a lighter session to really kind of get us focused and ready for the rest of the weekend. We've titled it Remembering the Guru, and what we're really looking to do this evening is refresh and renew some of our memories of the lives of our gurus. And the rest of the weekend, you will see, is focused very much on Shabad and Bani. And today's workshop will be more about guru history. And sometimes I find it's somewhat difficult to truly find out a lot about of our guru history, and there's many different resources that often say conflicting things, and it's hard to know exactly what is the truth and what is not. But hopefully today we will look a little bit at the sentiments of the history and the personalities of our guru. We talk a lot about trying to connect with our guru and live our lifestyle in a Gursic way. And the lives of our gurus and the way that they led their lives is often probably the best place to look at as to how to bring our inner guru outside into practice. Because it wasn't a philosophy, it was truly a way of life that the gurus set forth for us, and it was a way of life that they themselves practiced. And so, in many ways, to pattern our own lives, the gurus provide probably the best role modelship way in order to do that. So, I will not put myself out there as truly a history specialist, but these are really from the things that we'll talk about this evening will be a little bit from my own feelings when I read the stories and the sakis of our gurus and how we interpret that into the way of life that we should live now. And I'd like for it to be open, so as we talk about the different gurus, if someone else wants to chime in or add in something, the wealth of knowledge that we can get from each other's shared experience is a lot more than really me just telling you what I feel about their lives. But to kind of break up some of my own voice's monotony, we have Puneet Singh has been very kind to come up with some very clever puzzles. And you will be selected 2 by 2 at random to solve these puzzles. And then we will talk about the answer to the puzzle. I will give you the hint, every answer is a guru, but you will have to figure out the puzzles. But I'll let Puneet Singh kind of introduce more the game factor, and we'll break it up that way.
I have a list of all the people. So this is a Punjabi to English.
Is that MATLAB?
Yes. So I took a list of all the people who are here right now. I've made pairs of people, and the computer makes it. I don't decide. And so. Just one second.
That's right.
I tested it.
I've worked with Puneet Singh all week, and he is fast on this. He can fix it.
You got it. This is.
There's a format error in your text
I
box.
know.
Here come all the closet CS guys.
So first up will be, so basically we have 12 questions or 12 riddles or puzzles. So the puzzles are not very direct questions about the Guru. They are, you have to like make connections based on what popular culture is, what history is, and maybe some just IQ questions. Not really that hard. I mean, I can tell you the questions are a bit difficult because Kuldeep Uncle couldn't get any of them. If nobody gets any of them, then
Don't feel bad.
Don't feel bad.
We're within family, it's okay.
So, and if somebody feels hurt or somebody thinks that the questions don't make sense, I mean
Sorry, Mom.
that's
Monthly,
okay.
monthly.
It's my fault. No, and so I'll like we'll put two people up, and they have to come and sit on these chairs. I mean, I would like them to stand, but then the queue gets blocked. And once you put up the question, and you know the answer, then one of those two people, they have to press the first letter of their name. So and that letter will show up for us. I mean, the technology is not important. Basically, whoever so he answers and if he gets it right, then the explanation comes. Of your name, so that we know who pressed the button. And if two people have the same first letter, then we can
Figure it out.
So first up should be Seema Kaur and Gurmat Kaur.
So Paul's going to do it for her.
Yeah. I mean, I have to then change my program because
He's already ready. He's already ready, yeah.
So we stand there?
you can sit there.
Sit there.
I would like
That's this.
Paul, there's no elbowing of your
and some of the questions are difficult, so like if we can add, we have some clues also. So you have to press the letter M. You have to press the letter G.
No,
can
you have to
check
press
it.
S. Just need to press S.
Yeah, that's fine. Whatever.
Wait, press S.
It doesn't matter. You have to control. Can you only do Okay. So let's go to the first question.
So I don't yell it out.
You first press the letter so we know who knows the answer and we let you.
Is there a time limit?
No, there is no time limit. I mean, we have to finish before 9, but we got time.
You got it.
So,
Beer all day.
so coming up is question number 1.
And the audience, if the two cannot get it, the audience might be able to help out, okay? But not until the two have had a chance.
Okay, ready? So here you go. So it says connect the following. We have something here which looks like emojis. We have some numbers here and some letters. Okay.
So I'm supposed to tell you now who I think it is?
Yes.
Guru Nanak Dev Ji.
Why do you think so?
Because you have sad faces, you have 4 of them, those represent the 4 Dasis that you went on. The 122 marathons and 80 marathons represent the amount that he traveled during those Dasis. And then he retired in Kartarpur as a farmer.
Oh.
So apparently Sangeeta Kaur doesn't need to talk. We'll just continue on.
Fabulous. I know, but isn't it so cute, the sad faces? I didn't actually get the clue when Puneet had shown me it. I was like, what are we talking about? But I thought it was quite good. Okay. So Guru Nanak Dev Ji is the first guru, and his life. We won't delve too much into the life of Guru Nanak Dev Ji because that could take an entire retreat all in and of itself. And probably Guru Nanak Dev Ji is the one guru's life that many are familiar with in very significant detail sometimes. But just to recap a few things in his life that stand out to me, beyond being like a revolutionary and having a revolutionary vision for the way that human life should be spent, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, as we all know, was a huge social challenger of social norms and customs. And I think the unique part about Guru Nanak Dev Ji's life is that he did this in a place of and love, and that's why it was received so well by so many people, because the intention and the purity of thought was just so great. And I think in many of the stories, if you think about on the outside of it, how slanderous it could sound, and how very direct Guru Nanak Dev Ji was in trying to fight against different social norms, it was done in such a way that the offense was never there, because I think the love that he exuded for Wahiguru's creation was just so extensive. We all know he was a significant traveler. He traveled 122 marathons worth of miles, north-south, or east-west, and north-south was about what equated to 80 marathons, all by foot. And I think, we think today about how amazing it is and how wonderful it is when someone does a marathon. And when you think about the miles that Guru Nanak Dev Ji traveled by foot or by horse, how much travel that actually is, and how long that is, and what an amazing accomplishment it is. We get very excited if we have a friend who's run a marathon, and we're very proud of them, and it's extremely exciting for their health. And here's our Guru who's really done and traveled far more than any of us will ever do in our lifetimes. I think the other big thing with Guru Nanak Dev Ji that I just wanted to point out too is he was a significant protester to not just social customs, but to political regimes. And a couple of years ago, we did do the session on Bhagravani, and I think that we forget, sometimes Guru Nanak Dev Ji gets the image of a pacifist, and I think we have to remember Guru Nanak Dev Ji was actually quite the activist, and protested the slaughter of many by Babur, went to jail because of it, and didn't just sit idly by when there was corruption and political injustices happening. And then I think what is really significant to think about is Guru Nanak Dev Ji, after traveling his many udasis, did settle in Kartarpur and was a farmer, had a very active life living there, set up the first Sikh community in Dharamsal. And when you read the stories of Guru Nanak Dev Ji in Kartarpur, it almost sounds a little like a utopia. And I think as I grew up at camp, it kind of reminds me a little bit about camp. Every day, the community and the village would get together in the mornings, do their part together, they would have langar together, the kids would stay to go to school, the adults would go back to their farms and to the work that they would do. They would come back again together in the evening, and they would have dinner together, they would do part together again, eat them together, they would eat their langar together, and then they would all go back to their homes for going to sleep. And when you think about this life and constantly being surrounded by Sangat and how good that is for your soul, Guru Nanak Dev Ji created that in this city of Kartarpur for those that followed. And Sikhs came and followers came from all around the different places that he traveled to come meet the Guru, to come get instruction from the Guru. And I think for me the biggest part is when I read these stories, I just think about, we often think that that kind of life is too difficult to lead on a regular basis. When we talk about being with the Guru every day, that seems like that's an ideal form, but that was an actively lived form by many Sikhs in that time period. So I think the Gurus exemplified how that actually is possible. And in building this community, why that idea of community is so important to actually follow the Guru's hukum and the Guru's messages. Alright, we'll move on to question 2. Did anyone else have anything they wanted to add about Guru Nanak Dev Ji? Or any story that they love about Guru Nanak Dev Ji? Dev Ji? Yeah.
Inderpal Singh will have to fill in
Her name at the end would be Singh.
on Harry.
Inderpal. No. Stand up for your...
Good luck following Paul Reggie.
I know. Yeah, good for good.
Okay. This can be This one is a bit difficult. It can be easy also.
Let them suffer a little bit.
And the question is,
Yes.
relate. I'm just going to point out things. Puneet, okay, why do you say it to Gurmat?
I just looked at the picture.
Okay, what about the other pictures? They're wrong, you're wrong. Really, you want to try? I can explain it, like I can give a hint, like they still have one more. So, you have control.
Control R.
I think it's.
So we have some tools here which I will not describe. We have some tools here. We have some hands working on something here. We have Allahu, 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 Allah, something written there. And we have this picture of a girl called Annie. I think she's famous. It's popular. So, is there something about Annie? Is there something? Okay, you're supposed to raise it. So, we'll ask Robin for it. Yes. And how do you relate the clues?
Very good.
What about the others?
And Annie.
Who do we give?
So, yes, Ryuji's right. Actually, Andirbal is close because the architect, we have comments? Oh, sure, go ahead.
Like you have to have all the five.
Just says that how Guru Ramdas Ji, he got Golden Temple and city of Amritsar built. And Mia Mir, who was a Muslim, he kept the foundation of Golden Temple.
Okay, that's a good connection.
Good connection, but
we
not
have
the right
something
one.
else.
So that's
We have
not
something
that
else.
right, the same.
But it's good, like we have others.
That's okay, well. Just do that.
So I have no idea what he said, I can hear. Okay, so Annie, because Guru Ramdas Ji's parents died when he was 7. I think the construction, because he actually, when he came to Goindwal, he was a major part, he was one of the excavators for the Modi, so-called Isad. Now I'm thinking that the map thing, I mean, he was the founder of the city of Amritsar, so he did the city planning and he did all of that. Now, to me, that picture of the,
Yeah, those are
are the
connected.
same, right?
They're the same.
So I have no idea on the Allah, that must be a song that came from Oman. Oh, just because he's the fourth?
No.
I got the main one, so
Yes.
You don't know?
Anybody wants to try guessing on the
okay, I got a cheap, you know, we're allowed to use spouses. So yeah, actually, the last stone of Harmandir Sahib was put in by a Muslim Sufi.
That's what you are asking.
Yes, but that's not what this clue is for.
Shall we
Because her mother said wasn't built by Guru Ramdas.
Yeah.
So Allahu 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 Allah Akbar. And Emperor Akbar was, well, there's two ways that Guru Ramdas. Oh, okay. There's two ways that Guru Ramdas Ji is actually linked to Emperor Akbar. One is Emperor Akbar was the emperor at the time that Guru Ramdas Ji was the Guru. But I think also when Guru Ramdas Ji was by Jeka, when he was the follower of Guru Amar Das Ji, Guru Amar Das Ji sent Guru Ramdas Ji to go be an ambassador to Emperor Akbar in talking about the Sikh way of life, and there were questions that had been coming up from the surrounding people, and the emperor had summoned Guru Amar Das Ji to come and speak and talk about, have a discussion about what was the Sikh way of life, and Guru Amar Das Ji sent his trusted Sikh by Jeka Ji to go in his place. But yeah, those were all kind of the connections of the clue, but I think some things that to remember about Guru Ram Das Ji are that we forget he was an orphan child. He was an orphan child that grew up to then become the Guru and build an entire city. And building an entire city and making the planning for an entire city is not a small feat. And I think when we think about the amount of mehnat and hard work that has to go into something like that from the very young age when Guru Ram Das Ji was not the Guru, when he was the Sikh of the Guru. And as Bhai Jethta, how much of a survivor he was in selling Kungniya on the streets in order to make a living. And I think even more so, Guru Amar Das Ji and his relationship with Bhai Jethta, the orphan child, is a whole other relationship that we could explore. But in being a Sikh to Guru Amar Das Ji, or to the Guru, Bhai Jethta was an extensive labor. He did hard work day in and day out, hauled bricks, hauled construction, did the very hard labor things that are both physically and emotionally draining in building the Boli at Govindwal. He was commissioned by Guru Amar Das Ji to do that. Emperor Akbar was a unique person also in the parallel Mughal dynasty history that was happening at the same time, and probably one of the more tolerant of the emperors of the Mughal dynasties. And he actually had wanted to gift Guru Amar Das Ji with a parcel of land and ways to help with the langar, but Guru Amar Das Ji wouldn't take it for a Sikh place of land. So Emperor Akbar gave that land to Bibi Pani Ji, who was Bhai Jethta Ji's wife and Guru Amar Das Ji's daughter. And that plot of land is eventually what turned into Amritsar. And so I think the things that we don't think about are the hard work things that the Gurus did and what they did with their hands, and not just sitting and expounding great philosophies, but how they really got rough and dirty with everybody else and did all of the work that maybe many of us can't even imagine doing. The other big thing with Guru Ram Das Ji is that he became one of the first big employers, and in some ways, to do the work of building a city, you had to hire laborers in order to do that work, and he created a commerce system within Amritsar. So if you think about this time period in the 1500s, this is a big deal to make an entire city, to establish an infrastructure, and to bring people in and give them a salary for the work that they do. And in many ways, it's setting up a business. And I think we don't think of our gurus in this light, but that their personalities were such that they were able to do this work, the work that we think about every day. If we were an employer, if we were a business person, and we employed people and gave them a source of living, how would we treat them? And imagine how the Guru treated his laborers and the fair work and the fair earnings that he gave them, I think is something to look to as to how we do our regular daily lives as well. I think that's all I got. Okay, next set of volunteers. Well, forced volunteers.
Alam Singh and Puneet Singh.
Oh, how funny that this was the randomly kid.
You have to press the letter P and T. Whoever gets it first. It's not important. It is important. So, here's question 3. So do you know it?
Do you know
You
it?
press it. Oh. Yeah.
Oh, good answer.
Speak right into the microphone because it doesn't have a good range.
And you want the winner to speak, please.
I mean, you're supposed to press it into the
Is it Guru Harkrishan Ji?
That's my guess.
No? Are you sure?
Yeah, you have to relate all 3 groups. Wait,
Is that Delhi Zoo?
does anybody else have the answer?
Oh, Herman?
Guru Maharaj Sahib, because he opened up a zoo in Kirpur, he was an environmentalist, and Shah Jahan was emperor during his time.
Shah Jahan, I got it.
That's
Yeah.
correct. But
Yeah,
can you
I'm missing
connect
one.
Guru Har Rai Ji much more? But that's correct.
Okay, good. That's good. Guru Har Rai Ji was the environmentalist. Preserving, and the stories are that Guru Har Rai Ji did actually carry he carried a military of 2,200 soldiers, I believe is what many of the references will say. So he did carry an active military presence, but he really was, when they went on their hunting expeditions, he never really would want to kill the animals, he'd want to take them home, and he opened up a zoo. He also had a botanical garden, and they had lots of herbal supplements that came out of the botanical garden, and that's what the green homeopathic style symbol is. And then Shah Jahan built the Taj Mahal, and Shah Jahan was the emperor at the time of Guru Har Rai Ji's time period as serving Guru. But it's not just that Shah Jahan was the emperor, or there was this homeopathic medicine, but Shah Jahan carried a very interesting place in Sikh history as well, because he challenged a lot of what Guru Har Gobind Ji did. So remember, from Guru history, Guru Har Gobind Ji came preceding Guru Har Rai Ji. So Guru Har Rai Ji is Guru Har Gobind Ji's Sikh, prior to being Guru, and also his grandson by birth. And Shah Jahan was not a very nice emperor, actually, and had many battles with Guru Har Gobind Ji over religious persecution and social injustices and the tyranny that was going on at the time. So many of the Guru's Sikhs actually died at the hands of Shah Jahan's army. And then Guru Har Rai Ji becomes the Guru, and Shah Jahan's son, Dada Shikoh, becomes very ill, and there is fame about Guru Har Rai Ji's medicinal armamentarium, and the story is that the emperor writes to Guru Har Rai Ji to ask for help in trying to treat his most beloved son. And I think the biggest thing when I hear that story, because Guru Har Rai Ji does give them medicinal medications and sends them to the emperor for the son, and there are stories also about the son being very close to Guru Har Rai Ji, or coming and valuing a lot of what the Guru has done, is that this is the man who actually tortured and killed many of the Guru's Sikhs. But the Guru is able to look in such a way at anyone with such significant forgiveness that not only is it that he can coexist with Shah Jahan, but he actually helps Shah Jahan and helps Shah Jahan's family. And I think if we think about the idea of somebody murdering our friends and our family, I don't know if I myself would have it within me to not only not just hate the other person, but also love the person enough to actually help them. And this is the true character of our Guru, is that Guru Har Rai Ji, or the true character of the Guru, and in the form of Guru Har Rai Ji, is able to do this. And I think out of that story, whatever the stories are and however mixed or not mixed they are, for me, I think this is an amazing thing that a Guru is able, any individual is able to do, and I can see why it can happen in the form of a Guru, because it truly is exuding the Guru-ness of Varni in the way that somebody actively lives, truly in thought and in action. It's not just a thought, it truly was an action about the love of all creation. And I think that forgiveness and that reconciliation is something of high moral character. And then remember that Guru Har Rai Ji, while many see him as like also a pacifist, also carried a very staunch commitment to Varni. And when Ram Rai distorted the Varni, there was no tolerance for that kind of thing. He wasn't a pushover, shall we say, and his personality was strong enough to take a stand about that. Okay. I'm getting the wrap-up signal, so we're only at question 3, so we got like 7 more to go.
Quickly, everyone. It's, I don't know, Mohan Pal Singh, is he there? And Ghanshyam.
Yeah,
and
the random selections and stuff.
we have to press S now. And let's go on to the question.
So what letter do I press?
You press S, you press M.
Yes.
We do this, and are you guys ready? Let's see what this is.
Let's see what the pathologist does here.
Anybody in the audience who wants to guess? I think just.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Okay, let's him try.
I'll give you my guess. I'm not sure that I know the second one, but I was going to say Guru Angad Dev Ji, because he's teaching the child how to read, and Guru Angad Dev Ji, that was one thing he did a lot. He taught children how to read as well. The Gurmukhi alphabet into what it is. I'm not sure what the association with this thing is.
Just if anyone to try. That wasn't the right answer. Sorry. Okay, just.
Yeah, he got the answer.
Guru Har Krishan ji.
Oh, that's good. And why do you think so?
Yeah.
But you.
Being in a small age, reading EMC, so I can relate that to Guru Sahib,
Yeah.
with his age. And on the right, I think that's related to the Chechik.
Yeah, that's good. Here. The smallpox. So that's the smallpox virus. And
The
that's.
virus, a viral structure.
Yeah.
I don't actually have a lot to say about Guru Har Krishan Ji. He was Guru for 2.5, 3 years, but I think the things is that we remember Guru Har Krishan Ji is that even at a young age, there was so much wisdom and kirpa. It's at a very young age. I think it reminds us that the way of living the life of a guru or living a guru-like lifestyle is not unique to anybody, no matter what their age. And we all remember Guru Har Krishan Ji for his many healing tendencies at such a young age to take care of others and to be the benefactor and healer for so many others while he himself then became sick is something that we strongly remember.
I just have a question. What was the reaction of the Sikhs of the time?
To Guru Har Krishan Ji? So Guru Har Krishan Ji becomes Guru in a very tumultuous time in Sikh history. Although I will say this, all of Sikh history, all of Guru history has always been tumultuous. It has never been easy, and I think we often think about, oh, back in the day it was so good, but there are a lot of people that are not so good, even back in the day. And when Guru Har Krishan Ji becomes Guru, it's at somewhat of a surprise for Ram Rai, his brother, but Ram Rai was not considered to be good for the Guruship because he did distort Bani. He didn't have the kirpa or the light, shall we say. And there were factions that were developing at this time. So Ram Rai is trying to project himself as the Guru, and there are people in Musands at this time who start to follow Ram Rai, and there are different factions that are starting to build. Tirmal is another one at the same time period, and there's a Sodhi group too. So there are lots of different factions that are starting to develop with their own Guru-like tendencies, but the stories are that when Guru Har Krishan Ji is met, and his greatest presence was actually in Delhi, that the Sikhs of Delhi at the time could truly see that Guru Har Krishan Ji was the Guru. And the light passed on further after that, and I think that that's what verifies our commitment to this lineage.
And here's your question. Oh, gee, Gurmat. Why do you think that?
Because horse, governor connected everything.
No, that's not the right answer. Anybody else wants to try quickly? No, the answer is not going to work.
Guru Har Gobind Sahib, because he stayed in jail in London, and he's blind, so that's why Singh was there. I think the two horses represent, because he was also in the army, and then I think maybe a little bit of beady, because there's two horses, and then...
That is a horse, meaty But you are right about the answer.
I think like the answer has already been given.
Ruben
Unless you want to
Babaji.
give an explanation.
So I think the horses, I took from that is, this is what he asked for. He asked for horses and arms.
Right.
Yeah.
And they also represent, I mean, the main reason is because they asked for the horses, but also Dilbar and Gulbar, the two horses that Billy Chand stole back from the hunting.
No, that's good.
And Steel Fort is, of course, like that's the Logar fort that he established. And well, he's a Singh, but what he wanted to say was like Lion King, so he was a true king and Scar was not what you see in the movie. So he's the true king, so such a Badshah is. That was the true king. And you want to add something more?
Sure. The only other things I think when we look at Guru Har Gobind Ji's life is we look at him as a nation builder. So we know Guru Ramdas Ji was a city and we had Guru Nanak Dev Ji be a community builder, Guru Ramdas Ji be a city builder, and by the time we get to Har Gobind Ji, we're talking about nation building. And with the formulation of the Akal Takht, the Sikh community created their own justice system, so they deliver and administer their own justice, independent and sovereign of any other political structure. And in creating that political structure, it is truly starting to rear out a Sikh way of life as a full way of living, a government, and a justice system. The other things too with Guru Har Gobind Ji is the emperor at the time of Guru Har Gobind Ji is Jahangir and then Shah Jahan. So it's another example of Jahangir is the one who actually committed Guru Arjan Dev Ji to death. Guru Arjan Dev Ji is Guru Har Gobind Ji's father, but more than his father, his guru. And Guru Har Gobind Ji also is able to make amends with Jahangir. So Jahangir even puts Guru Har Gobind Ji in jail at Gwalior Fort, but Jahangir is actually, in history when you read, a very confused emperor. First he starts out with a lot of religious persecution. Whether or not he's really religiously inclined or not is somewhat suspect, and he kind of shifts his formulation and the way that he administers his emperorship at the advice of many of his surrounding people. There's a specific governor at this time, a Wazir Khan, different Wazir Khan than the one who committed the Chote Sahibzade to death, but that Wazir Khan at the time of Emperor Akbar and then Jahangir was actually very favorable towards the Sikh community, and it is said to have convinced Jahangir to let Guru Har Gobind Ji out of jail. And then afterwards, Jahangir even seeks out Guru Har Gobind Ji's company. And again, this is Guru Har Gobind Ji going on expeditions and trips with the man who killed his father. So I think, again, another exemplary scenario of truly being able to produce love in many forms. Guru Har Gobind Ji is also the first Guru after Guru Nanak Dev Ji to travel so much out of Punjab. So in the peaceful time that the Sikhs lived during Jahangir's time, post Guru Arjan Dev Ji, during Guru Har Gobind Ji's time, he traveled also very far and wide, up to Kashmir, to the levels of the, even up to Tibet, to the Tibet area, spreading the Sikh message and way of life far and wide. Shah Jahan, Jahangir's son, becomes the emperor after Jahangir's death. And then again, there is religious persecution, and this is where Guru Har Gobind Ji's famous 4 battles occur in sequence. So Guru Har Gobind Ji, not only like a political organizer and a nation builder, but significant, an amazing general and martial arts trainer. The stories are that he trains common people who do baking, people who were in the village who were traders and goldsmiths, how to become true warriors on the field. And all of the battles Guru Har Gobind Ji did were defensive battles, and in all of the battles the Sikh army won, but they never took in a parcel of land as a result. So truly the idea of a defensive battle, when you think that those can't be fought, they truly can.
You got this.
I'm going to congratulate him on his win.
J and R. So, are we ready? So, here's your question. This is easy.
I think rhyming, I think job solve, and connection with the conversation with
So the stories are also that Guru Gobind Singh Ji created the Dilruba. And possibly the bells, whether that came from Guru Har Gobind Ji or Guru Gobind Singh Ji, is I think up for discussion and debate, but I don't know if that really matters. But in any event, Guru Gobind Singh Ji, we know it has the stigma, I don't want to say stigma, that's the wrong word, but the image of a very martial arts related guru, and he was, but he's also a poet and an artist and a musician, and many of the other things that you don't necessarily equate in personality with the idea of a general or a warrior or a fighter. He truly also had that sun part of the Sant Sipahi. And the big thing with Guru Gobind Singh Ji is he's an amazing strategic planner. So when we try and look at like how we do our life planning, his skill set and really being able to strategically plan what was going to happen with the Panth and in what order and in which way that the Panth would be ready for these different changes is actually very forward thinking. But we won't dwell too much more on Guru Gobind Singh Ji.
Rena, Kaur, and Kamal Ji. This one is a bit fun. I hope you will get it. See, A the mana and see R the mana. Are you ready? So here's your question.
You're conferring.
Once you realize all the stuff is a juice.
It's not a competition. Does anybody in the audience have
Poonam Panji is thinking really hard. Harveer Singh.
I think we should give it. That's correct. Can you just explain the reasoning you made?
Because the answer is
Harveer Singh. Put the mic like this.
Your sword and take Khalsa Pasha's name of the king is great sword. And dog. So I would like him to put it on my resume.
Jimmy, you want to explain? Does anybody else want to?
That's Makhan. So Makhan Shalbana was on the ship or a boat. And he was with us.
good. It's very good. It was Makhan. So Gurudev Bahadur Ji, I don't think we ever really think of Gurudev Bahadur Ji as a warrior and a swordsman, but his name is Tegh Bahadur, which story says was changed from Tyag Mal because he exemplified such amazing sword skills. And I think we always think of Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji as the meditator who went to Bakala to like go hide out somewhere, and then all of a sudden the Guruship was like entrusted to him. But Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji during the time of Guru Hargobind Ji's battles was one of the best swordsmen in the army. And he also is a Samsabai in many ways. And I think we often look at our personalities as one or the other and forget that they're actually still the whole package. Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji was also a significant traveler, spent many couple of years in Assam, traveled in areas of Punjab, established Anandpur Sahib, and I wrote exposer up there because by the time Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji is the Guru, the Masan's corruption is exposed by Guru Tegh Bahadur, and he starts to put an end to these kinds of practices that have been happening that initially started with a very good intention, but the Masans, you know, we say that things are sometimes bad in Punjab now for the Sikhs, but Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji went to Amritsar and the door of Harmandir Sahib was shut in his face. He was not allowed to enter by the Masans that were there. So I think, you know, I look at things that are done in Harmandir Sahib today and I get a little angry as to maybe some of the disjointed practices or unfair practices, but this is not something new for our community. This is something that even the Gurus dealt with at that time. And Hanji?
Deshpreet Singh and Gurmeet Singh. Gurmeet Singh, sir. E and G, okay. Ready? So, connect. This is easy.
Oh yeah.
Great.
So, because I'm thinking of the last one here where
You have to connect all three.
all three.
Anybody else have any idea? You have to
Oh, thanks.
Can you explain it?
Okay. ABC is because of Gurmukhi. I don't know how to explain the other two, I guess. Oh, well, okay, fine. The last one was he did say about Guru Nanak Dev Ji. He did. So this is really good. He did say about Guru Nanak Dev Ji. And then I'm not sure for the last
The rest of them, right? He was a wrestler, right? I think he was about one that covered that.
Yeah, so he started Akhadas, which are the WrestleMania. Trying to make the popular.
So Guru Angad Dev Ji by skill set, when he was by Lana, was a trader. He actually came from somewhat of a wealthy family. His father, Feru, was a wealthy tradesman, had some trouble with business, but then they moved to Kadur and reestablished some wealth. But the story of Bailana, I think, is unique in many ways because it is a story of many people's lives, and that he was a very moral, upstanding community member. He actually, as part of the community in Kadur, as Bailana, they worshipped the goddess Durga, and he would lead the community to different pilgrimages, or to the pilgrimages. He was well respected, but he was searching for something that he felt was missing. And I know, like many people or all of us at some point in our lives feel like we're searching for answers, and something doesn't feel like it's complete. And he hears by Joda in the village doing Mool Mantra, and he's taken by the message of the Mool Mantra, and that hole that he had been feeling for many years, despite his many pilgrimages, he feels that glimpse of the Guru. He feels that in his soul, and can't get enough, not think about it anymore, and wants to reestablish or gain that connection. So seeks out Guru Nanak Dev Ji in order to hear these messages over and over again, and I think exemplifies what it means to be the servant of the Guru. And Guru Bailena, in all of his service to Guru Nanak, is really because he just wants to be with the Guru, and he just wants to feel the Guru all the time. And without question, he kind of exemplifies that idea of Mata Dekna, and really giving your mat to the Guru without question. And I think we talk a lot esoterically and logically about how we should question things and we should know things, and we should, but I think in many ways through Bailena, when you feel something with your Guru, when he felt this relationship, there was no longer any questioning needed. He found all of his answers, and he was able to serve, completely giving up his own mind. He was very fond of games, and he would use children's games and the games that, and wrestling in particular, to pull out examples to teach the Sangha that would sit. And after he became Guru, Guru Nanak Dev Ji asked him to go to Kaur to set up a Sikh community there. And similarly to Kartarpur, people would come from all over to come and meet the Guru. He did formulate the Gurmukhi alphabet. It was present prior to Guru Angad Dev Ji, but he formulated it into a distinct script for the Sikh community, furthering this idea that the Sikh philosophy wasn't something that was just a sect of something else, but creating its own unique identity. And the community kitchen, or the langar, really started to take off in Guru Angad Dev Ji's time, and Mata Kiwi, his wife, was also quite instrumental in providing this nurturing component of the Sikh way of life.
Okay, Inderveer Singh, Michigan, and Manveer Kaur, Ontario. Oh. It's the other Manveer. This is a simple one. Sure. Is it Guru Amardas Ji Sangeeta Benji?
It's kind of. It's not, but that's only because it's a trick question. The oldest story. I know it's kind of a trick question, but I didn't know how. We didn't know how else to put Guru Granth Sahib Ji in. You could have answered that. So this is just a slide to kind of go over some of the components, the physical components of the Guru Granth Sahib, but I think over the rest of the weekend we'll do a lot more about Shabad Guru and the idea of Barney. So we won't take any of that, but the Guru Granth Sahib Ji has 1,430 pages, 31 rags, first 5 Gurus, 9 Gurus Barney, etc. But I think some things to know about the Guru Granth Sahib is that when Guru Arjan Dev Ji started compiling the Adi Granth, and the Granth was formed for the Sikh community, it was used during the times of the Gurus. So the practice of using the Granth as the Guru happened during the Guru's lives. And when there were any social events or ceremonies, they revolved around the Granth. And even at the time of Guru Har Gobind Ji, Guru Har Krishna, Guru Har Rai, all of them used the Granth. And that was the one thing that I thought we should just talk about. It's not something that started, or the use of it started after Guru Gobind Singh Ji. The value of Barney was there from the very beginning, and was used to do prachar throughout the Sikh community as the Sikh community became larger in the different Guruships.
How old is Guru Nanak Dev Ji today?
That's a better trick question. And if you think about before Guru Nanak Dev Ji.
Okay, how long have they Guru? Okay, I agree. That's it. I know, like I told Sangeeta that Manveer will definitely find something wrong. So I'm happy that I'm proved wrong because I've been proven right. So we have next is Are there too many Manveer in Michigan?
Just your formula's wrong.
Okay, I think so.
You had a syntax error in line number.
Okay, let's
She has to just go with her son.
let's have this. We have an extra question, so jaldi. We don't have time. We have 2 more questions. Just to continue. Oh. Mandiri. I know he wants to. Are you ready? And your question, look up guys. Correct. So we have a picture of a hand with a pen.
Here.
Oh,
It's Guru Arjan Dev Ji.
why is that?
Compilation of Adigram. He was, tortured by being burned alive. The Fahrenheit 451. I'm guessing that's why he had that. Can you make a book? I'm guessing it's related to the compilation of Adigram.
Yeah, that's true. You know what this is?
That looks like Rosa Parks, so obviously it's some kind of.
There's a brother back there.
Okay, he doesn't like Rosa Parks. We thought this would.
Well, I'm just thinking, which group
That was Detroit, obviously.
Sangeeta, पहले और explain. So this is actually the cover of the book, Fahrenheit 451, and that book is about. So interestingly, it's part of the burning, and also the fact that it's also about books, which is both of them related to Guru Arjan Dev Ji. For Fahrenheit 451 is the temperature at which paper burns, so that's what it means.
What's the connection between Fahrenheit 451?
So Guru Arjan Dev Ji wrote the most amount of Bani, 50% of Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Yeah, so that's the book part of the Fahrenheit 451, and the burning part is how we attain Shri. And you want to do the rest?
I mean, I don't have any more things about the actual clues, but Guru Arjan Dev Ji also was an ambassador, and well, when Guru Ramdas Ji was Guru, and was sent by Guru Ramdas Ji in his place because the city of Amritsar was requiring a lot of supervision, and Guru Ramdas Ji's presence was requested at a wedding of sorts, and Guru Ramdas Ji sent Guru Arjan Dev Ji, well, Arjan Dev at the time, in his place to represent the Guru, but Arjan Dev, it's really weird to call them that without the Guru, so I'm just going to call them Guru Arjan Dev. Arjan Mal, okay. Longed to be with the Guru and felt that separation and the pangs of separation of being away from Guru Ramdas Ji and being so far away, and wrote letters back to his father, or to the Guru I should say, and describing that longing. And his letters were intercepted by Prithvi Chand, but eventually they did get to Guru Ramdas Ji, and Guru Arjan Dev Ji is brought back to the community. But I think that longing of wanting to be with the Guru is something that Guru Arjan Dev Ji had from the very beginning as a Sikh of the Guru. And he was also a city builder. He finished up with what was not just happening in Amritsar and Harmandir Sahib, but he also built Taran Taran, and was obviously a scholar, but he's an archiver and a preserver, and I think we think about libraries and librarians and the kind of the importance that that has to the future of any community, and Guru Arjan Dev Ji kind of played this role for the evolution of the Sikh way of life. And in protesting the injustices of the time, he gave his life in that injustice. So it's the true idea of the civil disobedient and taking all the consequences that go along with it.
Please come. Really enjoyed it. last question, or the last question before the bonus question. Ready? I mean, you're supposed to be looking. Okay, that's correct. And how did you guess?
Well, because I counted off.
That is true. So what number did you count up to?
That's the last left.
No. Oh, that's the last one.
And my G's on too, like, that's.
Does anybody want to, like, okay, let's do.
There's Boy Bunjia, and he said goes up. I don't know the book.
Oh, so.
Yes,
it's not
Puneet, running.
He's the one where he directed Gurmat and other Sevadars to build the police.
The well.
Yeah.
Commissioner. Or the well. So Gurmat too exemplified this idea of being a servant. So if anyone remembers, Gurmat, similar to the story of Bailera, is searching for a guru, actually spends much of his life searching to fill this void. And his brother's son is married to Bibi Amro. And he hears Barney being sung by Bibi Amro and is taken by the messaging of the Barney and finds his guru in Guru Angad Dev Ji. And I think the unique thing to know about this life, when you look at just the physical components and the physical ideas of it, is Guru Amar Das Ji is about 60-some years old or so when he meets the Guru. Guru Angad Dev Ji is about 30 years old at the time, and Guru Amar Das Ji in his 60-year-old body every day essentially does a 5K to bring the water from the river Beas over to Guru Angad Dev Ji to do his seva, and back and forth every day. And that's a really big thing, I think, for a 60-year-old man to be serving a 30-year-old man, but it's because the Guru wasn't really looked at in this way, and his level of devotion to the Guru is so whole in its nature that he does this every day without ever thinking about it. He is commissioned by Guru Angad Dev Ji to actually build the Govindwal, and then as Guru, he commissions the Boli to be built. And these are things that are being commissioned to be built because they help the community develop, and they provide sources of sustenance for the community. So the ideas of the langar being fulfilled and the contributions that are coming in are really to provide sustenance to the community. Water, food, clothing, and shelter are the biggest things that the gurus are providing for the community at large, and they want to make this available to anybody who needs it. He is the equalizer. Guru Amar Das Ji is known for really standing up for women's rights and against sati and against the idea of porta. He's the one with the story of how the emperor cannot come to visit unless he is also sat in the langar with everybody, low and high caste, and he takes what is an institutional concept and relates it to a very significant moral character and judgment. So Guru Amar Das Ji also is a systems manager. So in the sense that by this time in the Sikh community, the community is spreading out very far. The message of the Sikh way of life is going beyond the scope of, now there's Kartarpur set up, there's Kadur set up, there's Govindwal set up, and there's plans for many more cities to be built where Sikhs can have access to the Guru. And so he creates the Manji system as a way to disperse knowledge of the Guru's way of life, and sets up this Manji system far and wide through the reach of many of the places that Guru Nanak Dev Ji had traveled in his udasis, and sets up a way where the funds of the Sikhs can funnel through and provide for the whole community. And is really the instigator of this entire, what becomes later a big political system. So in managing the community, he really was able to do that quite significantly. And then Guru Amar Das Ji, even in his elderly age, is actually also very politically involved. While Emperor Akbar is very tolerant in general, in this time period, he uses his relationship with the emperor to navigate for different practices, for changes in the tax codes, and to make the way of life a more just community way. So he definitely gets involved in the politics and in the active approach to all of the different facets in which way a life is led. And then Puneet wants to do this last bonus question.
We did not ask for people to come. Okay, but yeah. Guru Singh. And why do you think of Guru Ji?
क्योंकि उन्होंने जो पढ़ गए थे उससे उन्होंने इतना कुछ अंदर सीखे फिर उन्हें टीचर ने कहता था कि मैंने उन्हें सिखाता हूँ.
So that's the right answer, that Pandit Gopal was his teacher. And he was writing poetry when the others were learning the alphabet. So that's actually in Guru Granth Sahib. The Shabad is it's Bhakti Lekhi 432. And there, like, each line he uses the letters of the alphabet to explain.
So that's really the conclusion of our session. It's a brief history of what is a very lengthy 10 lives. But hopefully we'll give a little bit of a basis of knowledge to go through with the rest of the weekend as we delve a little further into the lives of our gurus and the way of life that we lead.